I hope you enjoy this hero's journey into the realm of philosophy, psychology, and physics. If you want to help me create more content like this, please subscribe and consider sponsoring me here on YouTube. I also want to thank the Platonic Mystery School of the Divine Infinite Being for sponsoring this course, and you can check that school out at divineinfinitebeing.com. In the previous 45 slides or so, we've been analyzing Ernest Becker's book, The Denial of Death, in which he says he distilled 20th century psychology to its essence, which brings us back to Soren Kierkegaard, the theologian, who said that human beings at some point have to stop the infinite regress of questioning the reasons about whether or not to believe in God and just make a leap of faith in God by virtue of the absurd. That a human cannot escape despair unless we believe the seemingly paradoxical point of faith that an infinite, all-powerful, all-loving God is concerned with finite humans infinitely. That seems impossible, it seems absurd, but by virtue of the absurd, we should make that leap of faith. Ernest Becker says that was the culminating conclusion of 20th century psychology. But, he said, there's 3 obstacles to making that leap of faith. First of all, you can't just invent a religious belief, because then you won't believe it. So you have to have some inherited religious belief. The problem is all of the ancient religions come into question under the scrutiny of science. Since the scientific revolution, people have found it more difficult to believe, at least collectively, in one single religion. That was the third obstacle, is the scientific mind sees through what appear to be the illusions of religion. The second obstacle is you can't believe in your own private religion. Even if you do believe in God, if it's not collectively agreed upon, then you can't achieve the full flowering of human nature, because as social beings we require what he calls a collective fantasy within which we can surrender ourselves and fulfill the 2 paradoxically opposing motives of eros and agape. We want to merge with all being and lose ourselves in unity with the universe and God. That is the agape motive. And then the eros motive is we want to stand out as unique individuals and expand our self-powers and perform cosmic heroics that will be appreciated by God as a spectator. How can we believe in some form of collective ideology that satisfies these most basic human needs? The most basic of which, he says, is the fear of death, which arises from the paradox of the human being, on the one hand, a self-aware, symbolic self, to use Becker's words, and on the other hand, a perishable animal body. Animals have awareness, but they don't have self-awareness. They don't turn their awareness back on itself. Humans do. That leads to an infinite regress of self-reflection, which gives us the idea that our symbolic selves, our self-awareness, is infinite and eternal. The terror comes in when we realize the material body will die in the future. That is the #1 driving mainspring of human activity, and to overcome that, we have to believe we are immortal heroes performing for God in a way that has cosmic significance. The psyche equals singularity equation, I'm saying, makes these obstacles seem less intimidating, and that it should be easier now for the scientific-minded modern human being to take this leap of faith in God by virtue of the absurd. We're now going to begin the part of the class where we go over a basic overview of religious cosmologies that correlate very nicely to the cosmology that arises from the psyche equals singularity equation, which is based on a fusion of Jungian psychology and Leonard Susskind and Gerard de Hoof's holographic string theory, which includes the idea of a multiverse, with each bubble universe in the multiverse centered on a gravitational singularity with a spherical horizon, wherein each bit of information of that universe is recorded at each point, and then it radiates in on fundamental threads to create the holographic movie unfolding as the history of that particular universe. So the first example of an actual religion that has ancient roots and is still practiced today that we'll be looking at is the Vedanta cosmology, and in particular that branch of Hinduism known as Vaishnavism. There's 3 main branches of Hinduism: the Vishnu worshippers, which are the Vaishnavas, the Shiva worshippers, which are the Shaivites, and then the worshippers of the mother goddess, the Shaktas. Each of these different schools of Hinduism reveres the deities of the other, but they have a difference of opinion about which of the deities is the central source. So the Vaishnavas believe Vishnu is the central source of all being. And that's the school that we'll be studying, and one of the central texts of that school of philosophy, and for all Hindus, is the Bhagavad Gita. So these first 2 quotes come from the American philosophers Ralph Waldo Emerson and Henry David Thoreau. It was the first of books. That's a famous quote from Emerson. It was the first of books. It was as if an empire spoke to us, nothing small or unworthy, but large, serene, consistent, the voice of an old intelligence which in another age and climate had pondered over and thus disposed of the same questions which exercise us. So the idea of this being an ancient voice, this is what Becker says the human beings must believe in. And we heard Nietzsche say earlier, to believe in a religion, people have to believe that God gave it and the forefathers lived it. So that requirement for a collective immortality ideology is met, certainly by Hinduism, which is perhaps the oldest religion on the earth today. Moving to the next quote, this is Henry David Thoreau, who was a friend of Emerson's. He says, "In the morning I bathe my intellect in the stupendous and cosmogonal philosophy of the Bhagavad Gita, since whose composition years of the gods have elapsed, and in comparison with which our modern world and its literature seem puny and trivial. And I doubt if that philosophy is not to be referred to a previous state of existence, so remote is its sublimity from our conceptions." So the idea of the Bhagavad Gita spanning back through years of the gods might be a little bit of an exaggeration. According to the Vaishnava tradition, the Bhagavad Gita was spoken by Krishna to Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra 5,000 years ago, which was the end of the previous Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, and the beginning of this fourth age in a cycle of 4 ages, this fourth and most impious age called Kali Yuga. So to give a little bit of a background of the Vedanta cosmology, time in the material world on this planet consists of 4 ages, or yugas. The whole cycle lasts about 4 million years, and it's kind of like the seasons of the year. The first yuga, Satya Yuga, the age of truth, lasts about 1.8 million years. At that point, human beings were said to live 100,000 years and could be up to 60 feet tall, and all of the other species were similarly long-lived and larger, and that was when people were most pious, and they didn't need big cities or mechanical technologies because they were masters of yoga and they could explore the entire universe with their subtle material bodies. The next yuga in the cycle is Treta Yuga, which lasts, I believe, about 1.2 million years. People could be up to 30 feet tall, they could live up to 10,000 years, and they were now 1/4 less pious than the people of Satya Yuga. So the next yuga is Dwapara Yuga, which lasts about 840,000 years. People could live up to 1,000 years, and they could be up to 15 feet tall. And now they were 1/4 less pious again. That age ended on the battlefield of Kurukshetra in the no man's land between the two armies facing off on that battlefield that Krishna spoke the Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna. Arjuna was reluctant to fight, not only because he had relatives on both sides, it was a civil war about who should take the throne, the Pandavas, the sons of Pandu, of whom Arjuna was one, or Duryodhana, their evil cousin. But the main point is, Arjuna said, we shouldn't fight this war even though we are on the right. We are fighting for justice because the entire Kshatriya warrior caste will die here. And that will lead to the destruction of Vedic civilization. And that would lead to the beginning of Kali Yuga. Krishna told him, do not worry about the fruits of your actions, only focus on what your duty is. And your duty as a warrior in the warrior caste is to fight a noble war, and that's what you have to do here. And I'll explain to you why no one's really going to die on the battlefield, because everyone is an eternal soul, they're part and parcel of me, and the ultimate goal of life, says Krishna to Arjuna, is surrender unto me lovingly. So with that, we'll continue the analysis of the Bhagavad Gita. Bhakti Yoga, Bhagavad Gita. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna, speaking to Arjuna, explains that he is the supreme form of God and that Bhakti yogis are the highest yogis of all. So here's a quote from Krishna. And of all yogis, he who always abides in me with great faith, worshipping me in transcendental loving service, is most intimately united with me in yoga and is the highest of all. So we're going to see the various forms of yoga. Yoga means to yoke or to unite. How do you unite your soul with the Supreme Soul? There's different paths you can take, or yogas. Bhakti Yoga, loving devotional service to God, is the topmost path. That is what Becker says. 20th century psychology tells us that whether God exists or not, the only way to satisfy the infinite imagination of our symbolic selves is to see ourselves performing infinitely meaningful cosmic heroics for a God who loves us. A Kierkegaardian leap of faith in that kind of theistic cosmology is required for the full development of the human being. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 6.47, purport by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. So this is Prabhupada providing commentary on the previous verse from the Bhagavad Gita. He says, the culmination of all kinds of yoga practices lies in Bhakti Yoga. All other yogas are but means to come to the point of Bhakti in Bhakti Yoga. Bhagavad Gita 6.47, continuing with Prabhupada's purport. I'll go back over after I read this and define these different forms of yoga. So according to Prabhupada, when karma yoga increases in knowledge and renunciation, the stage is called jnana yoga. When jnana yoga increases in meditation on the supersoul by different physical processes and the mind is on him, it is called Astanga Yoga. And when one surpasses the Astanga Yoga and comes to the point of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, it is called Bhakti Yoga, the culmination. I say the psyche equals singularity equation is the most concise description of the omnicentric supersoul to date, the goal of Jnana Yoga. So that J-N-A-N-A is pronounced Jnana, as we discussed earlier in the class. Karma Yoga, karma means action. Yoga means yoking or uniting yourself with the transcendental world. So Karma Yoga is uniting yourself with God by performing your duty in life according to your Dharma. And the Dharma, or life path that you should follow, is determined by your natural caste. So it's a controversial point, the caste system. The original form of the caste system, as described in the Bhagavad Gita, depends on the quality of your behavior, not on your birthright. And symptoms of the different castes are provided by Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. So the four castes are determined by three modes of material nature: goodness, passion, and ignorance. Sattva guna, Raja guna, and Tama guna. These are the three fundamental vibrations that create everything in the material world. If you're primarily in the mode of goodness, you're a Brahmin. If you're in the mode of passion mixed with goodness, you're a Kshatriya, or a warrior administrator. If you're in the mode of passion mixed with ignorance, you're a Vaishya, a business person, or a landed gentry. And if you're primarily in the mode of ignorance, then you're a Shudra, a laborer. And then below Shudras are outcasts, the Chandalas who refuse to obey the law. But we're just going to focus on these four castes. Each of those castes has a specific duty assigned to that caste. And just by performing the duty of your caste, performing your Dharma, that's Karma Yoga. Performing your duty in this religious caste system, which is determined by the proportion of the three modes of nature that you manifest, following those rules and regulations is Karma Yoga. So when Karma Yoga increases in knowledge and renunciation, you have Jnana Yoga, the path of knowledge, or philosophical speculation, the goal of which is to have a realization of the inner supersoul, the Paramatma, the Atman within all Atmans, the supreme archetype of the self, the omnicentric singularity. When you've practiced Jnana Yoga to a certain degree, according to this purport, then you reach the stage of Astanga Yoga or Ashtanga Yoga. I've heard it pronounced both ways, which is meditating on your breath and certain physical, bodily, geometrical manipulations to amplify your insight into the supersoul. But finally, you come to the point of Bhakti Yoga, which is a sense of loving, devotional, surrendered service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This class is Jnana Yoga, for the most part, aimed at inspiring people to take a leap of faith in God so that you can perform Bhakti Yoga. And I'm saying that the evolution of philosophy since the Bhagavad Gita was spoken, and in the Western world since Plato's Republic, identified the ultimate goal of academic research to be opening the eye of the soul to the idea of the good, this infinitely bright source of light in the material world and consciousness in the spiritual world. That historical path of philosophical evolution has culminated thus far, I'm saying, in the psyche equals singularity equation, which is simply a translation of Carl Jung's own definition of the psychic energy, which is psyche equals highest intensity in the smallest space. That is the culminating point of Jnana Yoga thus far, and I think it enables us to take a leap into Bhakti Yoga much more easily. The multiverse, three Purusha avatars of Vishnu, Mahavishnu. So the Supersoul in the heart of everyone is one of the three Purusha avatars, these cosmic avatars of Vishnu. So let me read the slide here. Although Susskind presents the multiverse theory as the alternative to the illusion of intelligent design, which is the subtitle of his book, The Cosmic Landscape, ironically, it corroborates the Vedanta cosmology of the three Purusha avatars of Vishnu, beginning with Mahavishnu, big or great Vishnu. According to Gaudiya Vaishnavas, the ocean of Brahman radiates from the self-effulgent spiritual planets, Vaikuntha Lokas, all of which radiate from Krishna's planet, Goloka. Krishna is the original form of Vishnu, according to the Gaudiya Vaishnavas and other schools of Vedanta. The causal ocean coagulates from the ocean of Brahman like yogurt compared to milk. Mahavishnu, also known as Karana Dakashayi Vishnu, lays down on the causal ocean, which is called Karana Udaka, goes to sleep and dreams as innumerable universes exhale from the pores of his skin in seed form, inflate like bubbles, and then inhale back into his eternal form after one breath, which lasts 310 trillion Earth years. So, according to the Vaishnava school of Hinduism, there's two worlds, a material world and a spiritual world. The spiritual world is made of innumerable self-effulgent spiritual planets, Vaikuntha Lokas. Vaikuntha means without anxiety. Loka means planet. The planets without anxiety, where all the forms are made of eternal knowledge and bliss. Spiritual forms, the archetypes of which our material forms are like dream reflections, are literally dream projections, according to Gaudiya Vaishnavism. So each of those planets gives off light, which is Brahman, also called the Brahma Jyoti. All of the spiritual planets radiate eternally from Krishna's unique Vaikuntha Loka called Goloka, planet cow. Krishna is a cowherd boy, eternally living in the cowherd village of Vrindavan. We're going to be focusing here, though, on the cosmology, in particular, pointing out how closely it parallels holographic string theory cosmology, which, when united with Jungian psychology, gives us practically the same picture as we find in Vaishnavism. So the universes exhale from the pores of Mahavishnu's skin, and now we have a multiverse theory. Not only that, but each universe has another form of Vishnu in its center, as we're going to see now. Multiverse and the Purusha avatars, Garbhodakashayi Vishnu. Like the singularity of the Big Bang, another cosmic Vishnu form, Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, lays down in the center of each bubble universe. More specifically, he lays down on the belly of an enormous spiritual serpent, Anantashesh or Sheshnaga, another form of Vishnu, like a raft floating on the surface of the universal waters that fill half of a hollow sphere in the center of the universe, while Lakshmi, the feminine counterpart of Vishnu, the female side of God, massages his legs. From the lake in his navel a cosmic lotus flower stems, in the blossom of which the demigod Brahma is born. Brahma then sires other demigods who help him engineer the material planets in the cosmic lotus stock. That information can be found in various places, including Srimad Bhagavatam 1.3.2. So keep in mind Leibniz's principle of the identity of indiscernibles. All of these Vishnu forms, although they are separate, they're also all one. They're all Vishnu, and I'm equating them all with the gravitational singularity. One of the most important points to keep in mind in this class is that, although singularities appear in different points of space-time, they cannot be differentiated according to their spatial or temporal locations because they're all outside of space-time. They're equivalent to infinite speed, which is outside of time stops at the speed of light. So they're outside of space-time. Time and space both stop if you were to accelerate to the speed of light. You would be outside of space-time. And they're structurally identical, a point, a mathematical point. So although they are, on the one hand, different, inconceivably simultaneously, they're all the same. Well, it's also important, before we move on, according to this cosmology, the universe consists of a series of concentric spheres which represent the fundamental material elements. We'll be going over that in detail in a few slides. But in the hollow section of each universe, there's a hollow sphere half filled with water. And it's upon that ocean in the center of the universe that Garbhodakashayi Vishnu lays down. And from his navel, the lotus flower stems, and it's within the stalk that you find all the planetary systems. So the first Vishnu form, Mahavishnu, Karanodakashayi Vishnu, he lays down on the causal ocean, which is a portion of the ocean of Brahman that's coagulated like yogurt compared to milk. And he dreams as these bubble universes exhale from the pores of his skin. The fact that the megaverse of universes, the multiverse, is God's dream implies that it is God's unconscious mind, which has a lot of implications for the branch of theology known as theodicy. How can an all-powerful, all-good God allow evil to exist in the world? As Carl Jung will point out, well, if you see this world as God's unconscious mind, suddenly you've got some tools to work with to say, yeah, God's all powerful and all good, but evil happens because it's in God's dream. Can you be responsible for the evil things you do in your dreams? Could an omniscient God have a dream? Those are all good questions. But moving on now, we're going to go to the third Purusha avatar. Multiverse and the Purusha avatars. Kshirodakashayi Vishnu, Paramatma, the Supersoul. Finally, Kshirodakashayi Vishnu, also known as Paramatma or the Supersoul, manifests in the center of every material and spiritual particle in each bubble universe. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, "One who sees the Supersoul in every living being and equal everywhere does not degrade himself by his mind. Thus he approaches the transcendental destination." Later, Krishna says, "I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness." In the Mundaka Upanishad, we read, "Two birds, inseparable companions, perch on the same tree. One eats the fruit, the other looks on. The first bird is our individual self, feeding on the pleasures and pains of this world. The other is the universal self, silently witnessing all." That's the picture there, one bird watching another bird eat the fruits of the tree. Paramatma exists in the heart of every soul. It makes me think of Blaise Pascal's idea of God as a point traveling everywhere infinitely fast. God would therefore be at each point simultaneously. So we are parts and parcels of the omnicentric gravitational singularity. This is the inconceivable simultaneous unity and difference between the Atman and Paramatman. The point for now is the similarity between Paramatman and the gravitational singularity, which also manifests in the center of every bubble universe, and it is equivalent to the quantum vacuum that contains the entire multiverse. The three Purusha avatars can be seen as different manifestations of the same omnicentric point of infinite power. The difference between the physicist's description of the gravitational singularity and the Purusha avatars is that the Purusha avatars are sentient. They are omniscient. Even according to Leonard Susskind, the gravitational singularity contains all of the information from the past, present, and future of all of the universes. But he doesn't say that the singularity is aware that it contains that information. When you combine Suskind's cosmology with Jungian psychology, suddenly you see this Hindu cosmology re-emerging, which falls in line with what Carl Jung said. Even if you don't accept the literal truth of the Hindu religion or any of the branches of the Hindu religion, still, according to Jung's theory, all religions emerge from the collective unconscious archetypes. So that though some details might differ in different religions in different countries over different historical epochs, because they're all rooted in the same timeless archetypes, they're going to have a lot of similarities. That is, the parallels between Suskind's cosmology and Hindu cosmology are powerful evidence in support of Jung's theory. And that evidence should, as always with this class, help us decide that we should take this leap of faith in the idea of God, which is being described around the psyche equals singularity equation. Concentric spheres of universal elements. Each material universe consists of 8 concentric spheres of increasingly subtle material elements: earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. So that design of each universe you can find in the Bhagavad Gita and the Bhagavad Purana, also called the Srimad Bhagavatam. Some cosmic models have only 5 elements in the Vedic worldview: earth, water, fire, air, and ether. Other texts include 3 more subtle material elements: mind, intelligence, and then the outermost horizon of the cosmos is false ego. When they only have 5 elements, then ether, or akasha, is the outermost sphere, and when they include the extra subtle material elements, then false ego element is the outermost sphere. So false ego is a material element. In the Vedic worldview, mind is matter. It's not spiritual, it's a form of subtle material energy, and our subtle bodies are what carry the soul from one gross body to another during the process of reincarnation. The main point to keep in mind is that, like Leonard Suskind's holographic string theory, the Vedic model, or the Vedanta cosmology, also has a theory of information conservation at the outermost sphere of each bubble universe in the multiverse. It's either conserved in the ether element, Akash, or in the false ego element. So continuing here, the ether element known as Akasha is the intermediary sphere between the grosser elements terminating with the innermost sphere of the earth element and the subtler elements ending at the outermost sphere of false ego. So the earth element is a hollow sphere. It's not planet Earth. And inside the hollow sphere of the earth element is the ocean of cosmic water upon which Garbhodakashayi Vishnu reclines, as I say in this next section of the slide. The earth element is the innermost sphere encompassing a hollow area in the middle of the universe, which is half filled with water, upon which Garbhodakashayi Vishnu reclines, as explained above. The accelerating expansion rate of the fabric of space-time, the cosmological constant, culminating at the space-timeless speed of light at the cosmic horizon, resembles the 8 increasingly subtle elemental coverings of the universe described in Srimad Bhagavatam, each of which is 10 times thicker and therefore farther out in space than the preceding sphere. So Hubble in 1929, Edwin Hubble discovered, using the largest telescope available at the time, that first of all was believed to be star gas or starry nebula were actually independent galaxies filled with stars, and that each of those galaxies was receding from our perspective on Earth away from Earth at a rate that increases with their distance from the Earth. Then in 1998, Saul Perlmutter, trying to figure out how much that acceleration rate had been slowing down, discovered instead that the acceleration rate is speeding up. It was believed that yes, the universe is expanding because the energy of the Big Bang is still pushing it, but eventually all of the attraction for every material object for every other material object will slow down that acceleration and perhaps cause the universe to recollapse. But because of the dark energy in the quantum vacuum caused by the creation and immediate annihilation of virtual particle-antiparticle pairs, the expansion rate is speeding up. The point here to notice is that each of these material elements is described as being 10 times thicker than the one preceding it. So the water sphere, which is a hollow sphere, but it's 10 times thicker than the innermost earth sphere of the earth element. And then the fire sphere is 10 times thicker than the water sphere, and so on. So it gives the impression of the farther you go out in space, the faster things are expanding away from the Earth. Just one more parallel to keep in mind. Recall that Jung and Pali said the laws of psychology and physics should mirror each other because they're both coming from the archetype of the One, or the God archetype. There's other names, the Unus Mundus. And that furthermore, the mythologies of the world resemble each other because all of them emerge from the same archetypes of the collective unconscious mind. When you note the very detailed parallels between the Vaishnava Vedanta cosmology and holographic string theory that supports Jung and Pali's theory and should give us ever more confidence to take the leap of faith in this idea of the infinitely powerful omnicentric God. Concentric spheres of universal elements, Krishna as origin and end of everything. So this is Krishna speaking to Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita. I shall now declare unto you in full this knowledge, both phenomenal and noumenal, by knowing which there shall remain nothing further to be known. Phenomenal and noumenal. Immanuel Kant uses those terms. Phenomena is the world that you can perceive with your 5 material sense organs. That's the phenomenal world. And the thing as it is in itself that you cannot detect through your sense organs because all of your sense perceptions are filtered through the lenses of cognition, the a priori categories of thought, space-time, and causality. The world that you can't see directly is called, according to Kant, the noumenal world, and that's noumena. So this is as much as to say the material and the spiritual world. This is what Krishna is going to tell Arjuna about now. Earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego, altogether these 8 comprise my separated material energies. Besides this inferior nature, O mighty armed Arjuna, there is a superior energy of mine, which are all living entities who are struggling with material nature and are sustaining the universe. Of all that is material and all that is spiritual in this world, know for certain that I am both its origin and dissolution. So we're trying to overcome scientific skepticism to enable us to take a leap of faith in a personal God. Well, what kind of a God? What is the nature of the personality of God before whom a 21st century person could feel confident in performing our immortal heroics? Here's one model, Krishna. He is the origin of the Vishnu incarnations, the Purusha avatars, which we discussed previously, which I identify with the omnicentric singularity. At any rate, it gives you an idea of an ancient religion that has been practiced for generations upon generations that nicely correlates to the holographic string theory cosmology. In this class, I'm just saying, here's a framework upon which any religion makes more sense. The question is, do you need to believe in a particular God who has a specific name and specific pastimes? Or is it okay if we can all just at least agree that there is this omniscient personal God? In this class, I'm just going so far as to say, here's a model of the idea of an interacting God with whom you can develop a personal relationship. So going over the religion centered on Krishna just gives an idea of what it means to surrender to God. We will also be going through Plato's dialogues and the evolution of Western philosophy, which started with St. Augustine, the Catholic theologian. Any religion, I believe, makes more sense to a 21st century educated mind in the context of the psyche equals singularity equation. Vedanta version of God as cosmic string. Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita 7.68. So before I forget to mention it again, Bhagavad Gita. Gita means song, and Bhagavat means supreme person. And in this context, it means God. So the song of God. So here's Krishna talking to Arjuna. O conqueror of wealth, there is no truth superior to me. Everything rests upon me as pearls are strung on a thread. O son of Kunti, I am the taste of the water, the light of the sun and the moon, the syllable Om in the Vedic mantras. I am the sound in ether and ability in man. So the 2 points I want to focus on here are the idea that everything rests upon Krishna like pearls strung on a thread, which is clearly pertinent to a comparison of the Vaishnava Vedanta cosmology to holographic string theory. And then the idea of Krishna being the syllable Om and the sound in ether. So everything in the material world is projected from the outermost sphere of the cosmos. In some of the Upanishads, that ends at the Akasha element. The past, the present, and the future are interwoven there. And then this idea of everything being strung on a thread. Krishna is the sound of the ether sphere, he says, and he's also the thread upon which everything is strung, which seems to me to resemble string theory, which says that the past, the present, and the future are interwoven at the horizon of the cosmos, and then they project all of the atoms that we experience in the three-dimensional volume of space in on fundamental threads of energy. Vedanta version of God as cosmic string. So we saw Krishna say everything is strung on me like pearls on a thread. Here's another verse from the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Do you know the string on which this world and the next, as well as all beings, are strung together? Do you know the inner controller of this world and the next, as well as of all beings who controls them from within? If a man knows what that string is and who that inner controller is, he knows Brahman. He knows the worlds, he knows the gods, he knows the Vedas, he knows the spirits, he knows the self. He knows all. So that is clearly, again, pertinent to the comparison of Vedanta cosmology to holographic string theory. The string on which this world and the next, as well as all beings, are strung. Krishna claimed to be that string in the Bhagavad Gita, and here that string is also equated with the inner controller, who is Paramatma, Kshirodakashayi Vishnu, the omnicentric gravitational singularity, which is also the source of all of the fundamental strings. And again, according to string theory, the quantum particles are actually made of even tinier elastic threads or strings of energy, which wrap around the 6 extra spatial dimensions, which are curled up and compactified in geometrical shapes called Calabi-Yau manifolds. And the particles that quantum mechanics or quantum physicists perceive are actually the vibrations of those strings in combination with the geometry of the shapes of space around which they're wound. So the different shapes lead to different particles, the different frequencies of the vibrations that lead to different particles, but everything can ultimately be reduced to these fundamental strings. And Krishna claims to be the ultimate string upon which everything is strung like pearls on a thread. Vedanta version of God is cosmic horizon. So again, continuing in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, The things above the sky, the things below the earth, and the things between the earth and the sky, as well as all those things people here refer to as past, present, and future, on space, Gargi, are all these woven back and forth. So space is a translation of Akasha, the outermost sphere of the universe when only 5 elements are considered. Pitiful is the man, Gargi, who departs from this world without knowing this imperishable. And the word there is Akshara, which is a name for the personified Akasha. Again, the outermost sphere in this Upanishad, where they don't include the 3 subtle material elements of mind, intelligence, and false ego. Besides this imperishable, there is no one that sees, no one that hears, no one that thinks, and no one that perceives. On this very imperishable Gargi, space, Akasha, is woven back and forth. So first we hear about the fundamental string, to know which is to know everything, the Vedas, the gods, absolutely everything. Here we learn that the past, present, and future are interwoven back and forth on the Akasha, ether element, spherical border of the universe, just like holographic string theory, and it's a pitiful life if you die before learning that. So again, here's the importance of the psyche equals singularity equation. It seems to be the most recent manifestation of this eternal knowledge, which has been recognized by high civilizations, including the Vedic civilization of India, and as we'll see, the civilization of ancient Greece, beginning at least as far back as Socrates and Plato. I hope you are enjoying this hero's journey into the realm of philosophy, psychology, and physics. If you want to help me create more content like this, please subscribe and consider sponsoring me here on YouTube. You can also click the link to my website, psycheandsingularity.com, to sign up for a multiple choice test with over 100 well-crafted questions related to this class, and links to the specific parts of each video where the answers can be found. If you take that test to the end, you will receive a certificate indicating that you have become a Psyche and Singularity scholar. In addition to access to that test, there is also the opportunity to answer essay questions that ask you to relate concepts covered in this class to your own hero's journey. I will personally respond to each of those essays, point out any other parts of this class that I think might bolster your plan. Finally, I want to point out that this course is sponsored by the Platonic Mystery School of the Divine Infinite Being, and you can check those guys out at divineinfinitebeing.com.